Good evening, everybody. Let's retry this. Sometimes the internet doesn't work how you want it to work. So I had to do a restart. So hopefully that everybody can hear me. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, just let me know because I know we were having issues on LinkedIn and Facebook. So definitely let me know if you can hear me. We're back live on Instagram as well. So we will go ahead and get started in a second. I want to say thank you all for your patience. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but we got things on and moving. So we should be able to go. And today's topic, we're talking about the do's and don'ts working with your chair. See, we're good on Instagram. If somebody on LinkedIn could let me know if you can hear me okay, I want to make sure that we're good. Let's see here. I'll make sure we're good. All right, let's see what we got. Perfect. Everybody can hear. Perfect. Sorry, y'all. Thank y'all for your patience. We got stuff going on. You know how technology works sometimes. But we're going to go ahead and get into it. I want to say thank you all for your patience. Shout out to, let's see, Quantel, Otheniel, let's see, Ken. I really appreciate you all on LinkedIn for letting me know what's going on. I appreciate the support. So yeah, today we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of working with your chair. It's that time of year in academic year where you're trying to figure out who your chair is. If you already have a chair, you're trying to figure out what to do with them and how to work with them. And so I want to give you some strategy and insight that I've learned from working with over 150 doctoral students, as well as my own experience going through the dissertation journey, and then also training my own students about some things that I learned about how to make this process a little more seamless for you all. Real quick before we get started, if you just let me know in the chat if you're a doctoral student or you work on your dissertation, and kind of let me know who you are, what university. Again, I want us to build community in the comments, so definitely drop who you are and where you're coming from, just so we know and can build with each other. I think this is really important to getting out of the process, is to having a community. And real quick, this episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours is sponsored by the Done Dissertation Velocity Group Coaching Program. It is a 4-month coaching experience with the goal of getting a doctoral student to either their proposal defense or final defense over the next 4 months. So if you're someone who's trying to get their dissertation done quickly, we are definitely the program for you. And if you want to learn more about our program, I invite you to visit www.velocitydissertation.com. So I got somebody, doctoral student last year from Arkansas. Good to see you. Good to hear from you. Perfect. And congratulations on being the last year. That's a great time to be almost towards the end of the coursework and the journey. And thanks, Renee, on Instagram for the link. I'm gonna go ahead and pin that. So, okay, let's talk about the do's and don'ts. Like y'all, first things first, I have to even give you a little bit backstory of my own experience, right? I had a really supportive and great dissertation chair. Shout out to Dr. Tanitha Grosslin. She is a professor at the University of Southern Florida. At the time, she was my advisor and professor at Morgan State University, where I got my doctoral degree. Really great. Really provided a lot of support, coaching, mentoring along the way, and that's part of what I do in my own work as a chair, work with my own doctoral students. But I know from my own experience, when I've talked to other doctoral students, when I was going through the process, as well as what I see now from my side as a professor, seeing so many students now have gone through the process, that not everyone has that guidance and support. So what I want to talk about is just some lessons that I've learned to really get through this process. So what I want to do first, I want to talk about the do's of the process. I want to give you all some encouragement, some things that you all should be doing. So if you have your notebook, write this down. If you want to keep notes, drop them in the comments so that way other folks who are joining later can get the notes as well. If folks are willing to do that, definitely drop them in the comments. So the first do with this dissertation process is that you want to regularly communicate with your dissertation chair. The key to finishing the process quickly of what I have found is communication. If I had to boil down this journey to one word, it's communication, and in particular with your chair. So if you're a doctoral student who has taken a hands-off approach where you have been waiting for your chair to tell you what to do and to communicate with you, I want you to actually reframe that mindset and that way of thinking. I actually want you to turn that around. And what I want you to do is actually to start becoming more proactive in your communication with your chair. And so right now is a great time at the beginning of the semester where you can send, and I would actually suggest, draft the email tonight and send it out tomorrow morning. Send the email to your chair. If you haven't talked to them all summer, now's the time to catch back up with them and say, hey, chair, I know I've been quiet during the summer. Here's what I've been working on. Or maybe in your case, you may have not been working on something. Here's what I've been working on. Here's my goal over the semester. Here's when I plan to have these particular deliverables to you. Either it's a chapter, section, whatever, however you were working with your chair. Give them that email. Send them that email tomorrow because that is really important. Thank you so much for dropping the notes in the comments. For sure, communicate with your chair is so important because you want to establish the relationship, and communication is the only way to do that. What I see a lot of doctoral students do is they try to do everything themselves, and they feel like for some reason that you got through coursework by yourself without support, that when you get to the dissertation process, something that you've never done before, that all of a sudden you should know all of the answers and should be able to get through. And being in regular communication with your chair will help you kind of quell those expectations of yourself. And it will allow your chair to help you through the process. They are there to help you. Even though if you may not feel like it at times, that is their goal for many. I wouldn't say all, but for many, their goal is to help you get through. And so you want to be in regular communication. If you are not in regular communication, it will stifle your progression through your program. So first things first, one of the do's of the working with your chair is regular communication. So if you haven't been communicating, today's the day. Draft that email tonight after this live is over and have it scheduled to send tomorrow first thing 9 a.m. in the morning so it gets to your chair and you can start the process from there. Because what I found is that when you communicate more, you're on the top of your chair's radar. And the more you're on top of the radar, the more likely they are to move you forward in the process. That's just a secret that you don't see because you're just on the other side of the faculty member actually guiding you through the process. So first things first, regularly communicate with your chair. Second is that I want you to discuss expectations up front with your chair before you all get started working together. So again, the second do is discuss expectations up front. This is key because I see a lot of relationships go bad because there are conflicting expectations between the dissertation chair and you as the student. And so what I've seen happen is, for instance, some students feel that, a chair should turn documents back around in, a day. And the chair feels like they should have 4 to 5 weeks. There's a conflict in expectation. You have very different expectations. And because of that, you both are going to frustrate each other and it's going to turn into something that you don't want it to. So again, number 2 is that you got to discuss expectations up front with your chair before you all get started working together. And so if you have not done that quite yet, what I want you to do is actually send that message out and actually start doing it now. Discuss these expectations. And it's okay, like if you already had a chair, you've been working with them for 2-3 years, and it's okay. But have these conversations right now about discussing expectations. And this particular one is timely. I had a number of students in our Velocity Group coaching program who have actually not been able to get through the process because their chairs have left and they just haven't discussed expectations. And I'm getting somebody on LinkedIn saying they can't hear me. Can everybody else on LinkedIn hear me? I think we're good so far. Rita, you may have to, maybe something on your end, because I think we got other folks that can hear currently. So again, LinkedIn might not be letting me be great this evening, but it's all good. We're gonna persevere through this thing. So again, we want to discuss expectations up front with your chair so that there's just no apprehensions, no situations. Everybody is on the same page. Perfect. People can hear me. Okay, perfect. So once we get there, once we have our expectations together, the next do with your chair is that what you want to do is ask for clarity when something doesn't make sense. Because what's happening for a lot of folks is that you've been navigating this program and you feel like you should do it all on your own. But you got to start asking for clarity when you don't understand something. This is not the time to feel like you have to be the expert on everything. Remember, you have never done a dissertation before for most of you, right? I do get some folks who are going after a second doctorate. Much respect to you. But for many of us, this is the first and only doctorate we're going to get. And so there's no way that you know everything that goes along in this process. So what you have to be mindful of and be willing to do is ask questions. And again, even if you feel like your chair is not the most supportive, continue to ask the questions because otherwise you will never get the insight and information that you need. And it's really important to do so. And so again, number 3, ask for clarity when something does not make sense. You'd be surprised because we all want to feel like we're experts, right? And I think a lot of us go into our doctoral program and there's a lot of pontification that happens, right? A lot of us just talking real good in class. You might get in a class and you might feel like, man, they know everything. Like they got this thing down. And it's really just people playing around. Honestly, they don't. A lot of students don't have it together, and a lot of it's just fake, just put in, to kind of in front of the classmates. And so that kind of mindset and approach to doctoral work sometimes transfers into the dissertation process. But I want to let you know now that that is not the time or the space to be doing that, because you want to get the answers to your questions at all times. And this is something that folks in our Velocity Group coaching program can do with us on a weekly basis. They constantly come in with questions. And this chair is a hot topic. Literally, we talked a lot yesterday about dissertation chairs, how to navigate them, and what to do. So I think this topic is definitely timely for what folks are going through. And so for folks who are just tuning in, I just want to say thank you so much for dropping in. We're talking about the do's and don'ts of working with your chair. And this episode of Office Hours is sponsored by the Velocity Group Coaching Program. It's a 4-month coaching program and doctoral coaching experience with the goal of getting doctoral students the proposal defense over the next 4 months, or the final defense if you're past your proposal defense in the next 4 months. So if you're interested in learning more, I invite you to visit and submit your application at www.velocitydissertation.com. There you can learn more about the program and apply as well to learn more about working with us. So again, we're talking about the do's right now of working with your chair. So once you start to ask for clarity, the next do in the process, and this probably could have been the first thing I talked about, but it's something that we got to consider, is the idea that you have to choose your chair wisely. That is really important to this process. Choosing your chair makes a difference. And here's what I do know, and I've said this a couple of times on different platforms. It always helps if you've worked with your chair before, because you know how they get down, you know how fast they respond to how they respond to emails, you know how fast they respond to your documents that you turn in for class. And best believe, if you have a professor that takes 2.5 to 3 months to return a paper during class, that's probably how they're going to handle you when you are working with them with them being your chair. So you got to choose wisely. This is really important, because if you don't choose your dissertation chair wisely, you will end up in a lot of headache and heartbreak in this dissertation journey. And so again, you got to choose your chair wisely. That is a key and essential to getting through this process. And there are some look fors, as I mentioned. If you have them for class, that gives you a lot of perspective on who they are. But if you have not had them for class, what I want you to do is if you're thinking about this person as a chair, I want you to send them an email. And in your email, request a meeting with them, 15, 20 minutes. But in your email, you want to send them an abstract of what you're thinking about doing for your dissertation. You want to give them as much information up front as possible, so they can give you some insight about whether they are the best person and fit for you. And I really do think this is important about choosing the chair wisely. And here's a caveat. I want you all, a lot of folks enter higher ed, especially if you're trying to become faculty, those type of things. You find that your goal is to work with the most top, well-known scholar in your field. But the fact of it is, if you work with that top scholar, many of them can be so busy they don't have the time to be as hands-on as you think they should, despite having all the clout and insight into the profession, clout that they have in their field and discipline. It's great to work with those people, but there are a number of them who don't have the time because they're stretched in a lot of different ways, being a very well-known and high-profile faculty. That is just the reality of it. And I've heard from a number of folks who go to universities to work with these folks, these top faculty. They get disappointed because they didn't get the mentorship and guidance they felt they should have. But I always like to point this out because it's something to ask questions about. And to learn about this, you might want to ask and look into their past advisees. And those folks can tell you how hands-on or hands-off those particular faculty members are. Remember, we're not all trained in a particular way to support doctoral students. And to be quite honest, you all are in doctoral programs right now. Can somebody tell me, do they have a class on how to chair doctoral students? I'm pretty sure there's nothing like that going on in any doctoral program about how to chair students. And with that, a lot of professors don't have that experience. And then we get into doctoral programs and we kind of learn, we get, our own doctoral students, and we learn these things on the fly. And so you got to just be very mindful of this as you're navigating the process, because it can definitely hold you up from getting through. Yeah. And so folks say, no, like they don't have that type of class. Like those things don't really exist currently, and they need to be there. And this is what we're trying to do at Done Dissertation, is to help a lot of your faculty members as well get the support and training they need to help support you all better. Because again, we're not trained to, as faculty, we're definitely not trained on how to be a dissertation chair. We have professional developments, but sometimes those fall short as well. So this is definitely a piece of training that is needed for doctoral students. So again, choose your chair wisely. The next do, when you think about working with your chair, I want you to adhere to all the deadlines you set for yourself. Here's why. Dissertation chairs are very busy people. So behind the scenes, what's happening is that they might be advising you And then they could be advising as low as, let's say, 3 or 4 people, but at upwards of 20 doctoral students that they have on their caseload that they're trying to help get through this process. And again, 20 is not unheard of. There's a lot of large doctoral programs growing. It seems like every year there's a new doctoral program, and they're recruiting doctoral students, and these cohorts are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's putting a lot of stress on faculty. And so, your chair may have a number of students. So when you develop timelines and deadlines with your chair, do it as best as you can to stick to those timelines. It really helps your chair because they're trying to manage all these doctoral students. And when you adhere to the deadlines you set for yourself, they also are setting their own deadlines about when they can return work to you. So if you said, like, hey, I'm going to have this back to you in 2 weeks, and then it's 2 months, you expect for them, when you initially agreed, that their turnaround will be also 2 weeks if they took longer than the 2 weeks that you all agreed to, because you didn't adhere to your deadline. Now you're up against and impacting them and maybe the workload they have at that particular time when you submit your document. Again, there are a lot of intricacies that you all might not be thinking about that your chair is working through as they're trying to support you getting through the doctoral journey. And again, I'm just trying to give you all the game and the insight that many folks won't tell you, but it is a reality. Like, your chairs are really busy. It's not an excuse for them that they can't support you and get back to you and do things in a timely manner, but they do have a lot of things in addition to working with you as a doctoral student. And I just want you all to be mindful of that, as well as they have family. I mean, it's the pandemic. Like, there's still a lot going on for a lot of folks. And so, just again, if you adhere to your deadlines, it makes the process a lot easier. Or if you cannot adhere to your deadline, like, say something's happened, and you're not going to be able to make the deadline. Again, remember, our first do of this process is to communicate regularly with your chair. So if you're communicating regularly, you would send them an email and say, hey, I'm not going to be able to hit this deadline for X reason. Here is my alternative deadline. What do you think? Would this still accommodate your schedule and getting the feedback to me in a timely fashion? Now, when you are putting yourself out there and having this constant communication, it makes things so much easier to get through. And then once you set and adhere to these deadlines, the next part, what I want you to do is that whenever you submit a chapter for feedback, or actually, let me take that back. Whenever you submit a chapter for feedback and your chair gives you the feedback, every time that you respond to your chair, so let's say that, for instance, chapter 1, they wanted you to do something. So every time your chair gives you feedback, when you send the feedback back to them, you're going to send them not only the document, but you're going to write a letter back to your chair about all of the suggestions they gave you and how you have adhered to all of the suggestions that they did or not. You may find that some of the suggestions don't apply, or you may have a counter argument to their suggestion. I want you all to start sending structured letters back to your chair each time that you give them feedback. Because what I found is that part of the process is that you have to learn how to coach your chair to get through the process. And so part of this is like setting up expectations, because what's happening is faculty, we're trained when we're doing research, when we write for publication, when we're responding to a revise and resubmit, which is the same thing that's happening to you as a doctoral student. When you send a chapter for review, they say, we got to fix some things. They give it back to you for revision. When we do that for journal article publication, what we do is that when we send our revision back, we also attach a letter to our revision that outlines everything the reviewers asked us to do and how we have done them or not done them, and the rationale as to why, especially if we're challenging or not going to do something the chair or in this case, the reviewer recommends. And so I would say this is the same goal as a doctoral student. Whenever you're revising any feedback from your chair, submit a letter in addition to the document. I promise you start doing this, this will eliminate all the back and forth that you will have with your chair. And sorry, Quantel, that's probably a long one to kind of think through and how to note take. So whatever you come up with for that one, I appreciate it, because I know that one's kind of long and things to think through. So I appreciate you. Yes, and indeed, adhere to all suggestions your chair provided to you for revisions. And again, I want you to send a letter back to your chair with comments in what you've done each time, because your chair, it actually allows them to do your document quicker. There's not going to be any back and forth. They're going to be like, oh, okay, you did these things on this particular page. Like, be very detailed in your reply letter back. It will save you so much heartache and time. And faculty are trained to do this because we do it all the time for peer review publications. So I always say apply this to the dissertation process. And then lastly, the last do of working with your chair, and this is more so for you, right? If things are not going according to how you believe they should, every once in a while, you might need a time to take a step back and a step away from the dissertation process. Because a lot of times we're working with people, we get frustrated, we get in our feelings, but sometimes we got to take a step back and away from the document and away from working with our chair. Maybe a day break is all you might need to kind of recharge your battery. And this is in particular when you get feedback that you don't like, or you find that it's very negative, or that you just don't know what to do with. Take a step back. That step back will give you a sense of clarity. It'll actually give you insight on how to possibly address the issue. Even though you might not be writing that particular day that you take off, you're going to be thinking about what to do, and it will help your relationship with your chair. Because what you don't want to do is that if you don't take that step back and then you get in your feelings and you start responding out of anger to your chair or frustration, it comes off in the email and your chair doesn't take it the right way. And then now you've severed the lines of communication. And again, the most important part of this process, and your due, that's number one, is to regularly communicate and set expectation with your chair. And so again, you definitely want to make sure that you take a step back every once in a while through the doctoral process to give your chair a breather and yourself a breather. You might need a day break in between you getting feedback from them. Whatever it is, take it and don't send that email. As mad as you are, write the email out and delete it or send it to your friend, or just you'll hold on to it, but don't send that email because it will disrupt your momentum in the process. And so those were the do's in this. And again, for those who are just tuning in, we were talking about the do's and don'ts of working with your chair. And this episode of Office Hours is sponsored by the Done Dissertation Velocity Group Coaching Program. It is a 4-month coaching experience with the goal to help doctoral students who are at the proposal phase get to their proposal defense, or if you're past proposal defense, to get to your final defense and earn those letters within the next 4 months. And so if you're interested in learning more about our program, I invite you to apply and learn more at www.velocitydissertation.com. And so with that, we have been talking about the do's of the process. But just as much as we have the do's, we got to talk about the don'ts, because there are a lot of don'ts y'all be doing out here working on with your chair. And I want to make sure, and chairs probably are here for all this because they know how this thing goes as part of the process. Again, it's just really, really important. And so let's talk about the don'ts. First things first, on the don't expect your chair to be your best friend. And because while it's nice, it's not required. So again, don't expect your chair to be your best friend. And while it's nice, it's not required. I think a lot of us have gone into this journey thinking, when we think about our chair, we think about them as like, they should be our guide and like really bring us forward and do all the things and help us out above and beyond, go above and beyond the call of duty. I would just let you all know, don't always expect that. That's sometimes an unrealistic expectation of your chair. And it's an unfair one at times if you haven't talked about this in your journey. And so again, you don't want to put all these expectations on your chair. They don't need to be your best friend. And this is something I learned. I was teaching a class. When was this? It was I think last semester or the semester before. And I was teaching a class with doctoral students in my program. And these are folks who are writing their dissertation proposals. And as part of our class, I always have alum of the program come back and talk to the students. And I remember, shout out to Dr. Matia Gardner, came to my class and told students, I didn't need to have a best friend relationship with my chair. I just need to have a working relationship with my chair. And I really took that to heart. And what I would suggest for you all is that you don't need your chair to be your best friend. And you don't expect them to be your best friend. You just want a working relationship with them. And so again, when you start communicating regularly, you don't have these expectations, develop a rapport and relationship, and you will recognize that you may not be best buzz with your chair. You don't need them to be. You need to help you get through this process to get those letters. That's the goal with all of this. And they want to get you out because you are a reflection of them. So it's definitely a mutual relationship, but you don't want to go in expecting them to be your best friend. That's just unrealistic, and I don't want you all to get your hopes up, because I see a lot of students that do and are kind of disappointed about the process. So first things first, don't expect your chair to be your best friend. The second don't, and please y'all, don't do this. I've seen this go wrong, and I'm going to talk to you about a real life example of how this goes wrong. Don't send chapters to your chair and expect a 3-day turnaround unless it was previously discussed. So again, don't send chapters to your chair and expect a 3-day turnaround unless it's previously discussed. Because here's what I do know. Chairs have lives. They're the ones who are doing most of the reading on your dissertation. Your committee members will do a read through of usually a whole proposal and then the whole dissertation. But your chair is the most hands-on with you during this journey, right? And so you want to be respectful of their time. And you, again, when you have and talked about expectations, this doesn't happen. But I see a lot of doctoral students doing this, so I don't want you to do this where you go with the expectation of a 3-day turnaround on a document, unless specifically discussed prior. And how I saw this happen was I actually had a student who I was working on their committee, and I remember they gave us the document. They gave us a full dissertation proposal on Friday afternoon at 5, and the proposal was about 80 pages, and with the support of their chair. So this was an issue with the chair in this particular case. It wasn't the student's fault; it was the chair's fault for bad mentorship. But the student expected a 3-day turnaround, so they gave it to us Friday afternoon. They expected the document on Monday afternoon. There is no way that we are doing this. Like, professors have lives, not working on the weekends, like just like everybody else. And so you just don't expect that, because it's just not realistic. But again, if you have conversations with your chair and you're in constant communication, you might come to a particular cadence about how fast or slow chapters are turned around to you. Again, everybody works at their own pace. Like for me, I'm pretty quick when I give feedback. I've done so many at this point, and I like doing this part of the process. Feedback for me is pretty quick. So a lot of my advisees, I'm turning things around. I always say 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks, but I usually turn around in 1 to 2. Just depends on how things are looking. But I try to give myself a little buffer just in case. But again, you don't want to go into this thinking and expecting a quick turnaround. 3 days is unrealistic, and I don't want you all to get your hopes up. And I see too many people doing it. And in this case, with the doctoral student, because they had bad mentorship, I mentioned that I couldn't turn around that fast, and then it became a whole situation. Ended up not being on that person's committee because of the situation. When that all could have been avoided had they known and had their chair kind of advised them on like not doing that in their process. But again, not everybody has the mentorship, but I want to give you all the mentorship so that you don't all make these mistakes that can have a definite impact on the work that you do. The next don't of the process is don't choose committee members without running it by your dissertation chair first. So again, don't choose committee members without running it by your dissertation chair first. Here's and I talk about this all the time, but folks don't hear me until it's too late. What ends up happening is that a lot of US students, you have professors that want to be on your committee. You do all this work, you're really excited, which I understand. You go out to get them. And then what you didn't know is that those committee members in your chair had not gotten along for 10 years, well before you got into the doctoral program. And it just makes things so difficult when it didn't have to be. And here's my suggestion. All you have to do is run your choices by the chair first. Pick all the people you want to pick, and then give them the list and let them give you some strategy or insight about what they think about these committee selection, this committee makeup. They may have poignant advice for you that you are not thinking about because they're privy to information that you don't have. And so you got to think about that. So here's the don't choose committee members without running it by your chair first. This will save you so much headache, so much time in the process. You'd be surprised. I just see so many people doing this, and then they go out and pick these committee members, and it doesn't work. And then what ends up happening when you don't, choose committee members without consulting your dissertation chair, what ends up happening is that you get frustrated in this process because you're wondering, why are they moving so slow? But this is the thing, right? Your chair could told you like, oh, X faculty member either has sabbatical or they have a big project and they're not gonna be able to get to you in enough time, so it's gonna slow us up from getting you to defend. Those are all the things your chair can give you insight on that, and they have knowledge that you're not privy to. So all times choose, make sure that you don't choose committee members without running it by your chair first. It will save you years in the process. It will save you a lot of headache and gray hair as you're trying to navigate this process. It's already more difficult enough. Don't let the people get and disrupt you in this process. And the next don't is that don't expect that when you submit your writing that it will be approved on the first try. I think a lot of us feel like we're great writers, and we feel like every time we submit, and shout out to Dr. Patricia Varela, she's one of our coaches in the Velocity Group Coaching Program. Last night, she talked about this on the call, is like talked about her writing process, and she mentioned like, when she was writing her dissertation, working with it was like she wanted everything to be hot fire, right, when wrote it. But the idea and the fact of the matter is that your chair will always have a comment for you. So don't expect that when you submit your writing, you will get approved on the first try. It's not happening in many cases. There's some exceptional writers, and sometimes the arguments, everything is so tight as a chair, you just gotta be like, you know what, they got it. It looks good. But oftentimes it's always something. And it may be very small, but it's always gonna be something. So don't expect everything to get approved on the first go. That's just an unrealistic expectation. And I don't want you all to set yourselves up for disappointment when it doesn't happen in the way you want it to. And so again, academics are always going to find something. And for those of you just tuning in, this episode of Office Hours is sponsored by the Done Dissertation Velocity Group Coaching Program. It is a 4-month doctoral coaching experience with the goal of getting doctoral students to write and defend their dissertation proposal or defend their final dissertation over the next 4 months. And if you're interested in learning more about the Velocity Group Coaching Program and to submit your application, visit www.velocitydissertation.com. We still have a few slots remaining in our current cohort, because we're getting ready to have a couple folks that are getting ready to graduate. So it's great. We're getting folks who are just finished up their full dissertations and getting ready to graduate. And they've adhered to these strategies and came in and knocked things out and ready to get out of their process. So I'm looking forward to that. And again, these are some things that we teach our clients on how to do more in depth in our program. And so again, we've been talking about the do's and don'ts of working with your chair. And right now we're focusing on the don'ts. And the last don't that I want to talk about tonight, and then we'll open up for some questions from you all, that don't compare your relationship with your chair to the relationship your classmates have with their chair. So again, don't compare the relationships you have with your chair to the relationship your friends and colleagues have with their chair, because there are different people, different relationships, and different different approaches to mentorship around the dissertation process. So don't compare. And it's going to be hard, right? A lot of you probably going to be thinking about, well, they're finishing so fast and their chair like pushes their stuff forward to the committee. Once you start doing comparison, it takes you off course. And just imagine, right? And this is like the analogy I would give about the whole dissertation process, like driving a car. Oftentimes I get this analogy. I first talk about as a doctoral student, when you're taking coursework, you're in the passenger seat and your faculty members are in the driver's seat, right? They're driving the car during coursework. You're a student, you're seeing where they're going, you're seeing the process, you're getting the insight, you're getting the information about the journey, you're getting insight about the road, all these things. And then what happens is, for some of us, is that when we get to the dissertation process, when our process goes wrong, it's almost like the dissertation chair jumped out the front seat, dropped out the driver's seat, and you're still in the passenger seat. And you're still looking around, hoping that the car goes in the right direction, not realizing that you don't have that support that you once had when you're in coursework. And so what ends up happening from there is that you have two options at that point. A number of doctoral students will stay in the driver's seat forever and never finish the process. Those are the people who stay ABD, and you'll see it on their CVs, cover letters, their LinkedIn profile. They've been ABD. You go to look at it, they've been ABD since 2008. Those are the folks, because they stayed in the passenger seat. For my folks who want to finish, what they figure out is that, all right, faculty members have left. I'm still going to get the help I need because I still have faculty members in the back seat. But let me, switch over to the driver's seat and start driving this car a little bit and take a little more control over the dissertation process. And so once you jump into the driver's seat, you start to, get a hold of, okay, how does this car drive? You get a feel for the process. You start doing things. And then your chair will go into the passenger seat and help guide you and say, all right, make the right here. Okay, make a left up there. Avoid that pitfall. Avoid that, blocked, cut off road. That's when your chair comes in. It becomes so important. But imagine if you're driving your car, you got the car situated, you got you in the passenger, in the driver's seat, you're taking over control of the process. You got your car going. You got your chair next to you in the passenger side. You got your committee in the back seat, giving you suggestions on the turns and what to do. And then all of a sudden you see your classmate who was behind you in the race, quote, race, in their car with their committee member and folks. Now you see them speed ahead into the next lane to your right. And next thing you know, as you were driving straight on your lane, you start to turn and look over. Next thing you know, when you look over, you start to veer. And once you veer, you've gone off course. And that's because you start focusing on other people's process so much that you give that more energy than you do your own. And so as we're thinking about this, I really want you all to really start to begin to not compare the relationships that you have, with your chair to anyone else. Your relationship is your relationship and your journey is your journey. So don't do it, because again, you will veer off and you'll try to get in someone else's lane, not knowing that the journey, that is not the road, and that is not the place that you need to go. You need to stay in your lane, in your journey. And so again, this is something that you really want to think about with your chair. And again, those were the don'ts of the decision process. That last don't was, don't compare the relationship that you have with your chair to the relationship that your colleague or your classmate has with their chair. Two different people. Even if you all have the same chair, you all might have very different relationships with your chairs. Even if you are like a best friend and you both have the same chair, just how interpersonal dynamics work. It's just how relationships go. Things will be different. And so again, I hope this was helpful. And what I want you all to do, if you find that you're trying to figure out this process and you want to get through it, but you just don't know how, and you're like spinning your wheels trying to get this process done, and you want to finish, and you want to finish quickly because you're trying to get to that faculty position. You're trying to secure that increase consulting income. You're trying to do all the things that you want to do with your doctorate. You're trying to finally go to a cookout and not have someone ask you, hey, when are you going to finish your doctorate? If that is you and you want to get your dissertation done, the Velocity Group Coaching Program is a great place to be. We are a supportive community of engaged scholars who are looking to get through the doctoral process, but not only get through, but then also set ourselves up for success in the future. And that's where I think a lot of what we do in the Velocity Group Coaching Program really does help. So if you need that support, you want that help, I would invite you to apply and learn more about our Velocity Group Coaching Program. You can visit www.velocitydissertation.com to learn more about the program. And with that, I will open up for questions. I do see some questions in the chat. I'm going to bring those up. But if you do have questions, let me know. For my folks on Instagram, shout out to y'all. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Let me know if you do have any questions about that as well. And if you want to jump on live, we can do something like that on Instagram as well after we get off. And so one question that Malik proposes, is there a special way to move if your chair is in another country? And so, Malik, it just depends on what the situation is in terms of the not conflict, but what's the scenario currently happening with that particular chair. Uh, I would need to know a little bit more about the issue, and then I can provide a little bit more specific insight. Because, for instance, if your chair's in another country, it's a matter of time zone issues in terms of meeting. If that's the case, sometimes as doctoral students, we just got to kind of suck it up for a little bit and figure out how do we get on their schedule. I mean, it's tough, right? But at the end of the day, we want to get through this journey. So sometimes we may have to be a little more, bend a little bit to, work with our chair. So that's a great question. And we have actually, and it's something that we're working through in the Velocity Coaching Program. Now we're having a little more international focus. So I have a student right now who's in Kuwait who's working with us. And so we figure out the time zone changes and we kind of make things work. I mean, there's just something that when you're in consistent communication with your chair, you figure out ways to make things work despite the circumstances, despite the maybe inherent barriers that might be to the relationship. And shout out to Quantel Williams for dropping the notes in today. Quantel, do me a favor, shoot me a DM on LinkedIn, and I'll send you a free copy of the book. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate you dropping in notes. So yeah, I'll send you I'll send you a signed copy of 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation. Just go ahead and shoot me a DM on LinkedIn, and then we'll go ahead. My team will get your information, and we'll get a book out to you as a thank you, because you've been keeping notes this whole time. So for folks who are watching on the replay, shout out to Quantel for keeping notes today. I appreciate you. What questions do you all have about navigating the process with your chair, or just anything related to the dissertation journey thus far? Because I'd love to be of support to help you all get through the program. Rita, I'm glad that the information was very helpful. I'm glad the information was very helpful for you. Like I said, we try to make this applicable. Like I'm very much at my backgrounds in K through 12 teaching. I used to be a former music and special education teacher, and so I always think about like how do I make this stuff simple enough where I can teach it to my 8th grade students. And like a lot of what's happening in the dissertation process is about people, and the chair is the first part of that process. And you got to get the people right, and the chair is really important for doing that. And Ken asks a great question. What is the average time to complete a dissertation? So honestly, Ken, this really varies per discipline area. Like I know in some disciplines like history, sometimes they take a long time, like 5-6 years to complete because they're doing, archival work. It just depends. Our goal in the Done Dissertation is to help doctoral students write and defend their dissertation in 1 year or less. And so most of our clients finish within a year of when they start working with us. So our goal is to help you finish within a year. But yeah, again, the average time to completion can range anywhere from 12 to like 18 months for social science dissertations. But again, it can take some years for folks to complete. And this is just if people are doing everything they need to do. If there's any other circumstances, you can see folks that have been working on 5-10 years, and that's not uncommon to hear when folks are thinking about the dissertation process. But yeah, our goal is to speed the process up, and there's no need to be paying tuition for years when we can speed things up, get the support that you need, and you can finish on time and quickly. And Kim, what field are you in? I can be more specific too. We work with in our program, we work with doctoral students in all sorts of disciplines. So I have folks from nursing to mechanical engineering to education to communications to American studies. So we work with a lot of different types of doctoral students through the doctoral journey. And so we see it spread out in terms of how long it takes people to finish, but our goal is to get you out in 1 year. Any other questions? And if you have a question, if you're on Instagram, you have a question, if you want to jump on, you can put a request to put your video in, and I'll be happy to take those as well. And from folks on Facebook, YouTube, those who are all watching, definitely let me know what you all need, and we can definitely be able to support you all getting through the process. So, Ken, your PhD organizational leadership, Regent University, ABD Chapter 1 submitted. Oh yeah, Ken, we had one of our alum who recently finished with us. He was in that program at Regent as well. I believe it's an organizational leadership, or he's an educational leadership. He's a school leader. And then when Darren Thompson came to us, he started with us when he wrote his proposal. He started in January of 2022, defended his proposal April of 2022, and collected his data and wrote up the rest of his dissertation and successfully defended July of 2022. So it took him 7 months from start to finish. So definitely, if you need help, Ken, definitely reach out to us. We'd be glad to support and help you get through. We just know that particular program, having had a alum from our past cohorts come through that program. And Malik says, what's best practice in choosing a topic? As you know, I'm studying remotely in America, and my program is in Malaysia. I want to choose a topic that has relevance to the general person, but the Asian American community specific. I'm focusing on curriculum, African American community specific. I'm focused on curriculum and leadership. I mean, best practice in choosing a topic is to do reading in that whatever area. So, right, you say you're focusing on curriculum, and so if you're focusing on curriculum and leadership, what you can do is first start reading about curriculum and leadership to figure out, what's the landscape of what's happening right now. And then from there, you have an eye on, all right, I've read enough and I see where folks are talking about, but here's a little gap that they're missing. And that's where you insert your dissertation. And so just to give an example from my own work, I talk about a study that I did. I do research on diversifying the teacher workforce. And so there had been a lot of research around diversifying the teaching workforce that focused on teacher experiences, why teachers stay, why teachers leave, all these things about teachers, whether it's from teachers who are currently in the classroom teaching, as well as pre-service teachers, so those who are taking college classes to become a teacher. There's a lot of work written in that particular area. But I was very much interested, like, while we know a lot about teachers, when I was reading that literature, I said, well, before a teacher gets the job, they got to get hired. And so I got interested. Then I started looking at, all right, teacher diversity. Then I started looking at teacher hiring. And then I started reading about teacher hiring. And interestingly, there wasn't a focus on diversity in that research, right? So I was always focused on teacher diversity and I was focused on teacher hiring. But there was a gap that was in between those two. And that's where I ended up putting a study together. I focused on, looking at how are teachers of color hired into the profession. And in particular, when I actually went, deeper down, this gets into your conceptual framework, which can tie back in to choosing a topic, is that I found that a lot of the research I just talked about hiring generally, but they never focused on, and what my argument was, they never focused on how hiring officials may use intuitive practices like a gut feeling that they might have, and that's how they hire folks. And I was making an argument that the reason why we don't have a lot of teachers of color is because HR professionals who are hiring teachers hire off their gut versus actually having a rational, thought out approach to hiring. And so again, that comes from figuring out and doing reading broadly and then getting narrow about what are you missing. And then you start to come to your topic from there. So if you're focused on curriculum and leadership, I'll be focusing on you reading about curriculum and then leadership, and then looking at the intersection. What do scholars write about the intersection of curriculum and leadership? There definitely is a lot there. That's heavily a studied topic. And then from there, you just have to get focused on what you want to study. So at some point, you have to make a decision about what you want to do and how you want to study, and then move forward in doing that work. And you may have to teach a little bit for, depending on your chair in Malaysia, about how much context they have about what you're studying, depending if you're looking like in the US context, or whatever context you might be exploring your topic through. So don't be afraid and don't be frustrated when you have to teach them, because that's just part of how this thing goes sometimes. And this is for folks who have dissertation chairs that may even understand their topic. Sometimes you're coming at it from such a unique angle and approach that your chair may not understand or get it at first, so you might have to do some teaching. But Malik, let me know if you have any follow-up questions to that. But that's a great question. And again, this is something you got to start talking about with your chair if you haven't already. Like, I'm going to bring this up. Like, hey, chair, this is the topic I'm thinking about. What are your thoughts? Now we're starting to open lines of communication. They give you their insight. You can provide your rationale. You can have a conversation that you might hopefully end up like leading to the topic that you're going to be focused on. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Again, I hope this was helpful. And if you all need some support getting through this, there's nothing wrong with getting the help that you need to get through the process. Definitely reach out to us. Look into the Velocity Coaching Program. You can visit www.velocitydissertation.com to learn more about the program. And you can click on one of the green buttons as you scroll through the page to apply. Any other questions before I log off for the evening? We've been on for about, we've been going hard for about 45 minutes. So these are great questions. Again, I hope this was helpful. What you all can do before we wrap up is that if you can right now, share this post with 3 other folks that you know, or even just share it on your timeline on LinkedIn, or wherever you might be watching this, so that other folks can get the insight about this information as well. And Ken, I'm glad this was very helpful for you. Yeah, definitely. If you need help, definitely reach out. We know folks gotten folks out of your program. We getting folks out quick, so definitely get the help. And shout out to you, Malik. Thank you so much for your question. And yeah, we're always here to help, and definitely look into us if you need help to get through the process. Any other questions for folks? And again, we do these each week again, I want folks, there may be a number of you all who decide to work with us, and a number of you all may not. And, we just want to give insight. And then we know that, this information is great. You're not going to find information like this anywhere else. And so definitely tell your classmates. So if you can tell all your classmates that you saw this great live today about, the do's and don'ts of working with your chair, send this out. If you need a clip, copy of the link, because we'll have this on YouTube where it's much more shareable. I will be glad to send you the link for YouTube so that you can share this with your classmates. And again, if you need a speaker about the dissertation process, I'd be glad to come and talk with doctoral students at your university as well. And so what I want you all to do is to, one, share this right now. If you can click the share button, share this on your timeline, write something that you found insightful from it. And then lastly, if you all are interested in learning more about our program, visit www.velocitydissertation.com. And Malik, I really appreciate you sharing this on Facebook and LinkedIn. I appreciate you. So with that, y'all, I'm getting ready to jump off for the evening. If you all need anything, just let me know. Shoot me a message. We love to support you. And for those of you all who haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of Done Dissertation. And our goal is to demystify the dissertation process so that doctoral students can write and defend the dissertation in 1 year or less. This episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours is sponsored by the Velocity Group Coaching Program, a 4-month coaching experience with the goal to help doctoral students write and defend the dissertation proposal or their dissertation in the next 4 months. So if you need help and you want to finish in months instead of years, make sure that you visit www.velocitydissertation.com to learn more about our program and to apply. I look forward to talking to you all next week on another episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours. Take care, everybody.